So 2007, I've been working as an editor for PC World magazine, computer magazine, for 15 years, and one day, laid off. I had a severance package. I took a 4-month solo trip around the world and had a rotten, miserable time for most of the trip. But I'm a writer. On the trip, I kept the blog. And by the time I got home, I had 140 pages of catching and moaning and moaning and catching, but I had 140 pages of material, and it was all about travel and my experience. And this was 2007, and this book was also a travel memoir, and had been doing pretty well. By 2007, she had sold 5 million copies, so I figured 1%, 50,000, I'll be happy with that. So I took writing classes, joined writing groups, went to overpriced writing conferences, and after a year and a half, I had a travel memoir. And I showed it to an agent, and the agent was like, yeah, you know, there's no market for travel memoirs anymore. The thing that's hot right now are memoirs. So this was like 2010. Running with Scissors, popular memoir, takes place in Western Massachusetts. The movie had just come out. So I was like, okay, makes sense. So I took more writing classes, joined more writing groups, and went to more overpriced writing conferences. And after another year and a half, I had a memoir. And I showed it to an agent, and the agent said, yeah, you know what? Actually, there's no market anymore for memoirs unless you're a Kennedy. And I showed him this photo, and they didn't fool anybody. My face photoshopped in there. But the agent said to me, you know what? Your best option for getting published as a debut author is to write a novel. So, more writing classes, more writing groups, more overpriced writing conferences. After another year and a half, I had a novel. And I went to another writing conference, and I showed it to an agent, and the agent said, you know, have you ever thought about turning this into a travel memoir? And I was like, ah! But I kept at it, and I finally finished another rewrite of the novel. So 2015, done with the novel. 80,000 words, 325 Microsoft Word pages, and I started querying agents. So here's my spreadsheet. First time I sent it out to 30 agents, and none of them wanted it. Then I sent it to 40 more agents, and none of them wanted it. Then I sent it to 30 more agents, and none of them wanted it. And I was going to send it to 120 agents. And the way I got that number was I was at a writing conference, and I was talking to an agent, and the agent said, you know what, one of my clients, I asked the agent, you know, how many, you don't want this, but how many agents should I query? How do I know when I'm done? And the agent said, well, one of my clients queried 120 agents, and I was number 120, and I bought the guy's book, and the book got published. I represented the guy, the book got published, and the book was The Silver Linings Playbook. So I was going to do 120 agents. When I got to probably around 70, I started to think to myself, you know, this probably is not going to happen. So while I was still simultaneously querying agents, I started sending query letters directly to small presses. And I sent it to 15 small presses. And one of them, these guys were interested. It's called the Permanent Press. They're out of Long Island. And they publish about 16 books a year. And I was flipping out. I was like, whoa, somebody wants my book. I was just, whoa. And they sent me a 2-page contract, and they offered me $1,000 advance. And then I thought back to all this stuff I've been reading on the internet about small presses and the fraud artists and scammers and fleece artists and rip-offs. And I went to Writer Beware, and there was more bad news about small presses. I'm getting all kind of freaked out and worked up, and I was like, well, I hired a lawyer. So I was going to get $1,000 advance, and the lawyer charged me $350. So the lawyer goes through the contract. It was only 2 pages. The lawyer goes through the contract, says, yeah, well, you know, here's some things you might want to discuss with the publisher. So again, I'm getting kind of freaked out. I'm like, oh no, you know, nobody wants my book. These guys want my book. but they're going to rip me off. And I just spent $350 on a lawyer, and I'm getting pretty worked up. And I take out another spreadsheet, and I'm creating all this if, this, then. I'm creating all these scenarios. And I asked the publisher about this, and he says that. Then I'm going to have to say this, and I'm getting pretty worked up. I'm getting very worked up. So the day before I'm about to call the publisher for the big negotiation, I call my father. Now, my father's in his 80s. He's been a small businessman his whole life. He knows how to negotiate a contract. So I call him up. I say, Dad, I got the big negotiation tomorrow. Any advice? My father says, how many other offers do you have? Dad, I don't have any other offers. Shut up and sign the contract. So I signed the contract. The next step in the process is the cover. So I sign the contract, book deal is on. They send me a cover. Actually, typically publishers are supposed to send you a couple covers. They just sent me one. And this publisher, the Permanent Press, they specialize in literary mystery. So yeah, I was hearing the word literary, so I was like, oh, I guess my book is literary. But if my book's literary, there are no beer bottles in literary fiction. That should be a wine flute or a champagne glass or something. There's no beer bottles in literary fiction. But the other thing they sent, so again, I'm getting kind of worked up. And the other thing they sent me was the author photo. And I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. I was looking at that with the beer bottle and this with my face. And so I contacted a bunch of friends who also knew nothing about publishing. And they were like, yeah, you know what? Tell them you want your author photo to be the cover. I was like, oh, yeah, that sounds like a smart thing to do. So again, I'm getting really worked up. I got to call the publisher. And, if I say the wrong thing, he's going to cancel the whole book deal and take back the money, and I'll be out on the street. So I call my father again, and he's not home. But my mother's there, and she picks up the phone. So I email her this, and I email her that. And I say, Ma, I'm about to call the publisher. What do you think? My mother says, so, Mr. Big Shot author, how long have you been in book publishing? Ma, it's been like 6 weeks. How long have they been in book publishing? 35 years. Shut up, the cover's fine. So the cover was fine. Next step in the process. Book's pretty much done. And this was a letter, this was kind of the fine print. So the publisher sent me the contract, and they sent me this letter that I really didn't read until like later on. And this basically says, dear author, before you sign your contract, we wanted you to know what the book world is like. So this is a little reality check, little slap in the face. Generally speaking, books by non-celebrities sell between 700 and 1,500 copies. To even ensure that many sales, it is imperative that the pre-publication reviews be good ones. So the implication there is, if your book doesn't get reviewed, there's no book. So the way the process works, publishers, my book was supposed to come out in March 2017, November 2016. A few months beforehand, the publisher sends out copies of the books to reviewers. So a few months ahead of time, reviewers get the book, and they got plenty of time to review it. So, book goes out to reviewers in November. December 21st, no reviews. December 28th, no reviews. January 10th, I get a call from the publisher. He's not so happy. No reviews, no book. I am beside myself. I offer to buy the entire print run. I'm begging, I'm pleading. Does he know how long I spent on this, how much I suffered, and all these agents and all the rejection? How can you do this? And he said, no reviews, no book. We'll do an ebook, and you can keep the $1,000. So I'm a little upset. 2 weeks later, I get a call from the publisher. He's in a good mood. My book got reviewed. by Kirkus. So the book is on. And this is it. Finally came out March 2017. God bless Cambodia.